Thank you very much, everyone. So let's start with a question. Who has used a framework in the past, be it ampersand, knockout, angular, ember? Put your hand up if you've worked with a framework. Quite a lot of you. Awesome. Keep your hands up. Don't put them down yet. Keep your hands up. But you can put your hands down if you've ever felt frustration with your framework. If you've ever felt like bashing it into the ground. If you've ever felt like you just don't, why is this making life so hard for me? Everyone's got their hand down. Well, Pete, you get your hand up. Right, you can keep your hand up for the rest of the talk then. Yeah, so I've had this feeling a lot when working with frameworks. I get to a point where it just starts making life difficult for me. And I started to ask why. Why is something that's supposed to make my life easier making it more difficult? And I kind of ended up coming to the conclusion that this is because whenever we pick up a framework, we're making concessions on how we're going to build an application. We're making the choice to build the application in the way that the people who made the framework want their application to be built. And as soon as we want to go outside of that sort of narrow use cases, or quite broad use cases for some frameworks, we'll start going to feel a lot of pain. And then quite frankly, I was kind of tired of making concessions for frameworks. I wanted to be free. I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to work the way I wanted to work, use the abstractions I wanted to use, and use the patterns I wanted to use. So I started building a wee app from scratch. So a wee sort of personal app just to kind of manage my shopping list, because I'm really bad at making up shopping lists. Terrible at it. So I kind of started building this application, started putting it together, writing a ton of code to start with. I was feeling quite good, getting some features working. I took a step back and looked at it. And I noticed something. What I was doing was I was copying Ember.js. I'd essentially got to a point where I was writing Ember.js again. Now that's because I spent a good 2.5 years working on a big Ember.js application. And my brain had come to this idea that this is how front-end applications work and how you build them. But I wanted to break out of that. And I kind of got a realization that this happens not just in frameworks, but also for languages, that I kind of developed a kind of Stockholm syndrome for Ember.js. Let's say my brain had recognized I'm writing a front-end application, that's what I want, that's how I want to do things. And my brain hadn't been able to break out of that. So at this point, I had a good few features working. I decided to do the only thing that I knew was possible. I hit the delete key. Deleted the folder and started again. And then I started again, and the second time it was pretty much Ember.js again, so hit the delete button. The next time I went completely different, and it was shocking. Hit the delete button. But eventually, after a good few tries of trying to build code that I wanted to build and have the code the way I wanted to have it, I kind of got to something that I liked. Next, one big file of code. Now, this file that I was writing in, at this point, was about 400 lines long, which isn't the best place to be when you're working on an application. So I kind of realized that I'm going to need some tooling. I needed to bring some tooling into my application. Now, I've used JavaScript tooling in the past. I knew the kind of things I wanted to use. I wanted to use Browserify to bring in sort of a require.js thing. I kind of like that. I was using Sass, so I wanted to use Sass. Now, I needed some sort of server to serve up my files. So I did what I normally do, and I went and picked up Grunt. Now, I stood in this stage, well, not technically this stage, but the one over at Summer Hall 2 years ago now, talking about Grunt and how to put it together. And back then, I thought it was the bee's knees. And I think it was how many people have actually used Grunt in here, or Gulp, or something along those lines. Yeah, sure. So I started to build up my tooling based on these things. It took me 2 or 3 nights to do this. And again, I looked at it again and saying, is this the best way to do it? Because all the tools I was using did have some sort of command line arguments to them, had some sort of command line interface. So I kind of thought to myself, is it just as well using them? So again, I deleted everything. I deleted it all and replaced my 143-line grunt file or something like that with about 4 bash files that just ran a command, and Foreman, which is just a process runner to run things. And I did that all in about 40 minutes on the train back to Glasgow. And looking at this, I realized something else. I realized that we often pick up, I was using Grunt because it was a tool written in JavaScript. And I was because I was writing a JavaScript application, that kind of was making sense to me. But that's not always the right thing to do with your tooling. It's not always the right thing to use just a tool that's written in the language you're working in because it's written in the language. And that's something I tended to do a lot, and I think a lot of people will do as well. By breaking away from that and just using the right tool for the job and writing bash files, I had a lot nicer pipeline for building my application. I had browserify application for building everything together. I had Ruby Sass for doing all my Sass work. And then also had a wee Go server that I wrote, which was about 10 lines long. And they all worked great. And I was back running again. I had my files all split up into the way I want them, kind of grouped by functionality. And I was a happy developer again. I was getting on with my stuff. But it started to come again, that feeling of something going wrong, that feeling of hitting my head off of something as it continues to happen. And I tried to figure out where this was coming from. And although I was not using any framework at this point, I was using several dependencies. I wanted this to be an offline application because, quite frankly, my supermarket doesn't have very good Wi-Fi or internet access. So I was making this offline, so I was kind of using Hoodie to do offline work. I was also using Jade for doing my templates, to do dynamic templating and things like that. And I realized that these dependencies were causing me a problem, and not just the fact that I couldn't find a decent image or GIF for dependencies. They were causing me a problem because they were, again, inflicting on a way of working with JavaScript that they had the way they wanted to do it. They had an interface that built up that maybe didn't kind of fit with the way I wanted to write my JavaScript. They were enforcing something on me. So you'll never guess what I did. I hit the delete key again. I hit the delete key a lot doing this stuff. It was great fun. This time I just deleted all the dependencies. And one of the things I had done, which was reasonably straightforward, was I had at least put these things behind facades and adapters and hid them away, just distracted them away a wee bit from my code. So I went through and I started replacing these. I started going into Hoodie, where I had Hoodie originally, and replaced that with my own local storage. I learned how to use local storage in the browser, which was quite nice. And I did that sort of thing. And then I built my own sort of view processing type thing as well, which both have since been rewritten tons of times, just deleting things. But there was one dependency in my code that I hadn't abstracted away. And Dave Kennedy talked about earlier, and that was jQuery. Because, I mean, who abstracts jQuery away? Absolutely no one. But by this point, I'd already got rid of all the other dependencies. I had no frameworks left. I thought, I can leave jQuery there. You know, everyone uses it. It's fine. Or I could try and get rid of it. And that's what I did. I got rid of jQuery. And I started using the inbuilt browser functionality. You know, document get element by ID, document get element by class name, and all the rest of it. And all the jQuery stuff I written with could have been replaced with that. And it made me realize something about jQuery. jQuery is what, 2006 it came out? Something like that? And we were dealing with browsers like these. We were dealing with IE5, IE Firefox 1, Netflix Navigator? Sorry. Netflix have got a new browser, by the way. They don't even know this yet. Netscape Navigator. All of which, there was no sort of standardization of JavaScript of them. They all worked in different ways and worked in different patterns. But nowadays, in the modern era, so 9 years later, nearly 10 years after, who wrote jQuery? Because I've forgotten. John Rising, thank you very much. Completely forgot about that. Nearly 9-10 years after that was first released, browsers are better. Browsers, most of the time, will work the same way across with the standard set of APIs. And now jQuery has just become a very big, monstrous polyfill for older browsers. So I would say to you that it's time to get rid of jQuery. If you're writing a modern application for modern browsers, you don't need it anymore. I had my wee app running at one point on a Windows mobile phone with IE, worked fine, no jQuery. Unless there's a specific part, I don't even know what specific part of jQuery you would want, but there might be something in there you particularly want. Get rid of it. So I'm still building my application today. I keep going through, rebuilding, deleting stuff, rebuilding it, relearning bits and balls within my talk, within my application. And I keep going round and round in circles, deleting code, re-implementing it. I doubt I'm ever going to finish this because I'm looking for perfect code. And I've kind of realized there is no such thing as perfect code. If you're not willing to make concessions with perfect code, you'll never finish your application. I suppose kind of the question is, would I do it again? If I ever did get to the end of this application, which I pretty much doubt I ever will, would I start another no-framework project? The answer is yes. I actually already have in some ways. I did one with Ruby now. I've done a Ruby no-framework project. I got rid of Rails completely and wrote an API without Rails or anything. It was great fun. I learned a lot with Ruby. And if you're feeling that you need to learn more about JavaScript, and you want to understand why people make the decisions they do within frameworks, this is something you try. I was cursing people who wrote frameworks back at the beginning. But now, after trying to write my own framework, I understand the concessions they make and the concessions they have taken and the design decisions they have made. But that's an individual project. What about if I'm working with a team? What if I'm working at work? Would I do a no framework? Because work has a slightly different connotation to it. You've got to deal with clients that kind of want their application built and don't want to wait forever for it to come out. And at this point, I think the answer is it depends. If you have a position where you need to get this out really fast, you know what? Frameworks are brilliant for them. You know what? If you need to get the project out fast, I would still use a framework today. However, unlike working with yourself, if you've got a team with you, they can help you with the design. They can help you get over that thing where you just keep going round and round and round and round in circles. And brain freeze. Dang. Sorry. Yeah, they can stop you going round and round in circles. They can actually get you over the finish line, but you will still be making concessions. Because unfortunately, in this world, we always have to make concessions. And that went a hell of a lot quicker than I practiced it last night. So I apologize. Yeah, I'm finished.